Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuddha Kamala Shri Vaishnava Shri Sadvaitam Sadhu Parijana Sahitam Chaitanya Vedam Shri Radha Krishna Radha Sagana Krishna Prasaya Srimate Bhakti Namaste
Maharaj, you're muted.
Srivasari forthcoming. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Radha Shivasari forthcoming. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Pariprajaka Stotra Sri Srimad Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Pariprajaka Stotra Sri Srimad Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Samveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Nitai-gaurasundara. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna, my dear devotees. As far as possible, I request you to put on your cameras so I can see your moon-like faces and it is more personal. Thank you. So we shall continue reading from my forthcoming book, Dancing White Elephants, Traveling with Srila Prabhupada in India, August 1970 to March 1973. And last time we read chapter 2 about Amritsar, and today we will read chapter 3, Delhi, October 30th to December 3rd. From Amritsar, we returned with Srila Prabhupada by train to Bombay. At a stopover in Delhi, we were met at the station by D.D. Gupta, a lawyer with whom Prabhupada had been corresponding. While we were speaking, Mr. Gupta requested Prabhupada to leave some disciples in Delhi to begin activities there. Prabhupada turned to Guru Das, who had been riding in his compartment, and said, "This man is inviting us. He says he has a place for you to stay, and he knows of a temple where you can have programs. Get down and see what you can do." He gave Guru Das 50 rupees and told him, "Try to start a temple in Delhi. It is the capital of India and very important." Guru Das asked for some devotees, and he and Prabhupada agreed on a team: Yamuna, Gopal, Bhakta Bruce, and me. Dr. Bruce later became initiated as Bhanu Das, and now he is Bhanu Swami. So we detrained, and as Prabhupada's train pulled away, we offered our obeisances to him outside his window and then waved, praying for his mercy. And so began the preaching in Delhi. It was such an adventure for us, wrote Yamuna Devi. Whatever Srila Prabhupada said to do, we did. And to me, it was really no different than going to Bombay. When you were with Srila Prabhupada, it was all such a new and exciting experience, and the core of it was chanting. Whether we were at a big program with tens of thousands of people, or whether we were on a street corner with only 5 people, whether we were at a home or in a palace or in a riverbed, we were there for chanting, for bringing Harinam Sankirtan. So being left in Delhi was really just another facet of that. We were going to do the same thing we did with Prabhupada, only he was now sending us off on our own. Ultimately, we knew that Prabhupada was going to send each of us out over the next 2 years to preach in this way. So we accepted Srila Prabhupada's surprise instruction readily. He wanted us to start something in all the major cities of India, especially through making life members and performing Harinam Sankirtan. For Yamuna, being the only woman in the party posed unique difficulties, especially in terms of hygiene and living conditions. But she saw it all as a test of her commitment and perseverance. She remembered, at the time, it didn't seem like such a massive challenge. However, it turned out to be a bigger test than we all anticipated for several reasons. First, in those days, there was no question of a bank account. None of us had any money of our own, and we wouldn't even think of spending a paisa to buy contaminated water in dirty glasses from the vendors. From the time of our arrival in India, all of our needs had been beautifully taken care of by our hosts. But this was the first time we were completely on our own and fully dependent on the mercy of Krishna. Mr. Gupta, who had promised all facilities for us in Delhi, took the 5 of us in a taxi to Old Delhi. This area, next to Delhi Gate, was the beginning of a predominantly Muslim area of Delhi. Mr. Gupta's promised Dharamshala was just at Delhi Gate. The final lane had to be traversed on foot. So we passed what seemed to me a sea of Muslim ladies in their burqas. And then to get to the front door of his residence, we had to climb a kind of ladder from the main street up to the top veranda. It was the most unusual entrance I had ever seen. When we got to the veranda, there was a little concrete room with bars on it. Bars on the windows and bars for doors. End quote. The rooms were very basic, just plain concrete with whitewash on the walls, abutting a courtyard at the center of the building. We had to walk, or in urgent cases run, around the courtyard to use the latrine. There was no toilet, Yamuna recorded. So Yamuna's saying, immediately noticed that we were not alone on the veranda and pointed to what looked like a lumbering white possum. I asked what it was. Mr. Gupta casually answered, "Oh, have to sleep on the floor with his rats." Giriraj proposed that we should have at least one bed so the lady of the group didn't have to sleep on the floor. So Mr. Gupta got one charpoy for me. We all had sleeping bags, and I slept on the charpoy. Yamuna Devi is speaking. Yet even with the sickness, we went out each day onto the street corners to perform Harinam Sankirtan. Even by India's standards, it was unbearably hot, crowded, and unclean. In those days, people would not give rupee donations, but rather paisa donations. Sometimes we'd collect only enough for one meal of prasadam every day. And of course, when we were invited to a home, they would always provide us nice meals. And that would enliven us immensely just to get a clean, full meal. End quote. When we reported to Srila Prabhupada on our street Harinam Sankirtan program, he directed our efforts to focus on making life members and trying to cultivate prominent citizens and government leaders. On November 7th, Srila Prabhupada wrote to Guru Das, instead of engaging in Sankirtan, if you, husband and wife, try to see so many government members and ministers and other important men, that will be nice. You may try and see Indira Gandhi, and perhaps you can meet this President Giri, shown in the enclosed news clipping. I think because your pictures are shown together with him, he will meet you. You should definitely see Jay Dalmia of Scindia House, New Delhi. He will become a life member, and he can suggest others who may also become life members. He is a relative and very close to Ramdas Darndaria. So you can also see his big brother, Ram Krishna Dalmia, and make him a life member. His daughter came to London, Ascot, to see me. If there is any difficulty in staying where you are, You can ask J. Damya to provide accommodation in Birla's Dharamshala. The Dharamshala is a very good place with lecture hall. You can speak in the lecture hall in English, and you can advertise for members, and they will appreciate it very much. End quote. In the auto rickshaw on the way to meet Mr. Damya, Gurudas and I chanted intently. Chandra happened to be on his way to visit the mayor, and Mr. Damya said to him, "Why don't you take them?" So Dr. Chandra took us and we met the mayor, Lala Hansraj Gupta, who was very pleased to meet us. So one day, we were present during our meeting with Mr. Damya, and because of Damya's suggestion that Chandra take us to his meeting with the Delhi mayor, doors began to open for us in rapid succession. Dr. Chandra was a prominent and pious man and was enthusiastic to help. He was concerned about propaganda being circulars sent by the US government to spy, and he wanted the propaganda stopped. His strategy was that if the devotees could somehow have a picture taken with Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, it would give more credibility to our movement and quash the rumors. Dr. Chandra spoke to several people about our sincerity and the legitimacy of our credentials, and somehow through him an appointment was made with her. So the meeting was arranged with Guru Das, Giriraj Das, Gopal Das, Bruce, and me, Yamuna recalled. We met her at her home after breakfast and brought her little gifts. She was quite fascinated and asked for us about why we're embracing Krishna consciousness. She to the practice of Vaishnavism, not just externally, but internally. So she asked philosophical questions, not just superficial ones like what are you doing or what is your program? But she seemed interested in our spiritual endeavors, and especially in me, because I was a woman and she was a woman. And so she connected with me in some way. So he had a very nice, long discussion with me. And then met her again on 2 other occasions to invite her to programs. Ultimately, she didn't accept the invitations, but she assisted us behind the scenes by speaking up on our behalf whenever people wanted to hamper our programs due to political agitation. So in the end, she was very positive towards our movement and helpful in significant ways. And I remember feeling that she was going far beyond the call of an obligatory audience with people. She was actually interested. Feeling the interview nearing its end, the devotees were worried about how to ask for a picture, and this was what Srila Prabhupada had asked of them. But Mrs. Gandhi herself suggested it. And that now well-known picture not only pleased Srila Prabhupada, but also boosted our preaching efforts all over India. End quote. In the photo, I held the large volume of Krishna book, which we had brought to present to Mrs. Gandhi, with the back cover facing the camera, so that Srila Prabhupada was in the image. He was pleased with the photo, and on later occasions, such as an indoor visit with Maharaj Tukoji Rao Holkar and Maharani Sarmista Bal Holkar at the Lal Bagh, Paris, he showed it with pride. On Prabhupada's direction, we also went to meet Sri D.R. Gupta, an old friend who had hosted Prabhupada for some time before Prabhupada went to America. Mr. Gupta fancied himself to be a scholar, a Gyani, and as he related, he would tell Prabhupada, "You are Bhakti and I am Vedanta." He would present to Prabhupada his understanding of Vedanta, and while he was doing so, Prabhupada would chant on his japa mala. Another helpful connection in Delhi were the Joshis. They were, as Yamuna remembered, quote, "a lovely family who assisted Srila Prabhupada when he came to Delhi on his frequent trips from Vrindavan to oversee the publishing of his original Srimad Bhagavatams and Back to Godheads. One of the most memorable for me was Mrs. Joshi, a devotee with connections to Vrindavan's famous Sri Radha Raman temple. This kind and intelligent woman not only became a good friend and nursed me back to health after my first serious bout with dysentery, but more importantly, she was a veritable treasure trove with stories about Srila Prabhupada during his many visits to her home. Mrs. Joshi was also an inspiring example of spiritual standards in the kitchen. She had deep devotion to Lord Krishna, and her intuition, skill, and experience merged with the subtle compositions of her dishes. In Mrs. Joshi's capable hands, I learned some of the preparation techniques and dishes that Srila Prabhupada would later commend as super excellent. In spite of the illness, uncleanliness, and a host of other challenges, I was actually enthused on one level because I got my first taste of what Srila Prabhupada had to confront when he came from Vrindavan to Delhi for his books. He was just fully dependent on Krishna for even the most basic means of survival. We were also in that position, even though we came from the West. So whenever something came to us, we were incredibly aware that it was Krishna's gift because we were trying to do this little service for Srila Prabhupada. We would all get together to have philosophical discussions to try and understand, to put into perspective what we were to do and how we were to do it in Krishna consciousness and for Srila Prabhupada. Despite the enormous challenges, we all were imbued with the consciousness that we were all like marionettes, means like puppets, and Srila Prabhupada was pulling the strings. For me, the core concept or understanding in bhakti, that service to the Guru and Krishna is not only pleasing, but enhances one's identity instead of diminishing it, was gradually becoming more and more clear as the months and years went by. How could we be in such unappealing conditions and yet feel growth from them? This was the Krishna magic at work in Delhi. Knowing how important the Life Membership Program was to Srila Prabhupada gave us constant motivation in our service. Yamuna would later cite this inaugural Delhi experience as foundational to her understanding of how one becomes dependent on Krishna and the spiritual master. She felt that the Sangha of us sharing our experiences and philosophical understanding, however rudimentary, was central to our achieving a positive and encouraging devotional outcome, despite the enormous challenges. We saw it as our training ground, and we were ready to take what we had learned to the next outpost. While in Delhi, I submitted an article to Back to Godhead, BTG, entitled Krishna, Our Dearmost Friend, which was subsequently published. So in the book, I quote extensively extensively from the article, but for the sake of time, I will not do so now. Soon, now we're reading up to Vrindavan. Soon after our meeting with Prime Minister Gandhi, Srila Prabhupada wrote Gurudas, a big temple and compound belonging to the Maharaja Bharatpur on the bank of the Yamuna at Keshigat is for sale. Therefore, I would like you to go immediately. Prabhupada also sent us a package containing a handwritten note and a large iron key. In the midst of all the austerities, sickness, and penury we had been enduring, the key represented to us the unlocking of something wonderful and long desired, entrance into the holy land of Vrindavan, and what Prabhupada had called, quote, the hub of the spiritual universe, end quote, the Radha Damodar Mandir. It was the key to the spiritual world. When Guru Das left, and after several days we had not heard from him, the rest of us followed. As soon as we arrived in Vrindavan, I felt something different, as if Krishna and his cow friends and cows were still present 5,000 years later. Later, when Srila Prabhupada asked me about my visit, he himself articulated for me what I had experienced. Quote, when we are in Vrindavan, we don't see Krishna now, but we can feel his presence. I thought of the residents of Vrindavan looking out in the same way for their beloved Krishna and Balaram as they returned with the cows 5,000 years ago, Yamuna reflected. The nights in Vrindavan are strangely reticent, the stars all-encompassing and appearing almost touchable. There are no loud sounds in Vrindavan at night, only kirtans from temples and houses, bicycle bells, temple bells, birds singing, peacocks kinging, and dogs barking. Vrindavan is like a dense forest of longing, great longing and urgency for Krishna captured in every vision. The flowers are so sweet and plentiful, whites, reds, maroons, pinks, and greens. Monkeys, pigs, elephants, horses, dogs, camels, and hundreds of cows, bulls, and calves all reside on Vrindavan's streets. The market bazaars sell sweet pedas, gulab jamans, laddu, rasgulla, and rasmalai, as well as devotional accessories. With early morning came the shouts of Radhe Shyam from every direction and the softer sounds of japa. Srila Prabhupada told us we should consider all of the inhabitants of Vraja as devotees. In this first visit, that was easy to do because everything was mystical and colored with the dyes of its newness and its spirituality. We saw all Vaishnavas as honoring other Vaishnavas. We saw everyone as servants of Krishna, always chanting and serving and glorifying Radha and Krishna. That was the special mystique of this place, the spiritual dimension of Vrindavan Dham. End quote. At the Radha Damodar temple, we took out the key that Srila Prabhupada had sent and opened his kitchen door. Yamuna described. The wooden door swung open slowly, its iron hinges groaning from disuse and its weight. Shafts of sunlight shone through carved window shutters and fell onto shades of silvery gray. Every surface was coated with at least 2 inches of powdery Vrindavan sand that it obliterated corners and angles and made all forms look ethereal. The shutter that overlooked the samadhi was split, so there was even more dust in there. Except for the samadhis of Jiva Goswami and Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami, the entire compound of Radha Damodar was covered with fine sand. We had kirtan, and then each of us entered into our own prayerful reflections. Srila Prabhupada had given us instructions that his papers were to be cleaned out and burned. This was a very difficult instruction for us to follow, because everything related to Srila Prabhupada was sacred to us. Even the seemingly ordinary receipts for small purchases or papers having to do with his business or householder life. That he had given the instruction, so we tried to follow it, although we did not burn everything. Srila Prabhupada's trunks were not locked. When we opened one, we found some of his clothes inside, a quilted saffron jacket, bandi, which the mice had eaten holes in, and a heavy woolen chadar, which had disintegrated to the extent that when we picked it up, it almost completely fell apart. There were also the personal papers, which we later took to the Yamuna, where we made a bonfire and burned them. So, my dear devotees, this was chapter 4. Delhi, October 30 to December 3rd. So my dear devotees, thank you for listening so patiently and attentively. And now, if any of you have any questions or comments, you can raise your hand, your physical hand or your virtual hand, and we will discuss further. And again, as far as possible, I request you all to put on your cameras so we can see your moonlight faces, and it will be a more personal experience. Yes, Krishna Jivani Devi Dasi.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, Dandavat Pranam. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to you and Srila Prabhupada. Thank you, Maharaj. Although there were connectivity issues, it was so enlivening to hear your reading. I humbly request that we also get an audiobook in addition to the physical book.
Oh.
I think that would be, because when you read it, there is so much emotion in it. And it's almost like we can listen and there is a movie in our mind. When you
That's a good idea.
So I think in addition to the physical book, an audiobook would be amazing and preserved for eternity. Yes. And I had one question, Maharaj.
Yes.
I was very, it moved me to tears when you made the realization about serving under such austere conditions, even without adequate meals. You said that gave you a glimpse of what Srila Prabhupada must have felt when he went from Vrindavan to Delhi.
Yes.
Were there moments with Srila Prabhupada where you all had a chance to ask about that period? because Srila Prabhupada was very private. Many things came out later, all the suffering that he endured.
Yes.
Were there times that you were all able to ask what kept him going during those times, or how he sustained his faith when anyone else would have just given up?
Well, Srila Prabhupada had implicit faith in the order of his spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta told him, if you ever get money, print books.
Mm-hmm.
And so he took, the publication and distribution of books to be of utmost importance.
Mm-hmm.
And so he would make trips from Vrindavan to Delhi. He would go to the printer. He would do everything. He would buy the paper. He would transport the paper to the printers. But he was surrendered to the service of his Guru Maharaj, and he did whatever it took to fulfill his spiritual master's desires, even though it wasn't easy.
Thank you, Maharaj. Maharaj, if others are waiting for a question, I'll wait my turn. I have one more question. So whenever it's my turn, I can ask them.
Let's see this one. Yeah.
I see four hands raised. One was Krishna Jivani's. Krishna Jivani, Mataji, are you finished?
Maharaj, I have one more question, but I want to make sure all the devotees have a chance. And when their turn is done, and if there is still time, I'll ask my second question.
Okay. All right, we'll go to the others and then we'll come back to you. Hare Krishna. So, Chandrika Priya.
Hare Krishna, dear Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All praise to Srila Prabhupada, all praise to your divine grace. Thank you very much, Maharaj, for the wonderful reading. I missed parts of it because of work, but I was so fortunate to hear some of it. And you all were, it looked like you all cooperated so well, even despite of all the austerities that were there. You worked nicely together.
Yes.
For service of Srila Prabhupada. And I was just wondering, how can we also do that? Because sometimes we see that when we try to work in a team, like some devotees can be disrespectful. You don't know how to deal with that.
Well, we always kept the goal in mind, which was to serve Srila Prabhupada and please him. And I was fortunate. I was always happy with all the other devotees with whom I worked. And we just didn't consider individual differences to be of any great significance. What was really important was, Srila Prabhupada's service and Srila Prabhupada's pleasure. But I was always very happy with the devotees with whom I worked in those days. In Juhu, there were some difficult personalities amongst the devotees. But even then, we tolerated for the sake of Srila Prabhupada's service.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj, for the wonderful answer. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Avaduta Nitai-das. You don't show that you're muted, but I can't hear you.
Am I audible now, Guru Maharaj?
Yes, now I can hear you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah. Guru Maharaj, my question is that when we go to the Sankirtan or distributing Prabhupada's books, so what should be our emphasis to distribute Prabhupada's book like Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, or distribute Prabhupada's books like Prabhupada Leelamrit and extension of Leelamrit like your books? Should we emphasize more on distributing the Leelamrit and the life of Prabhupada or giving Bhagavad Gita?
I mean, they're all good. I remember when the Prabhupada Leelamrita first came out in Bombay, so many people came to my office and told me that having read Srila Prabhupada Leelamrita and understanding more about Srila Prabhupada, they felt more inspired and encouraged to read Srila Prabhupada's books. And His Holiness Mukunda Goswami commented that although the six Goswamis wrote so many books, but Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami's book about the six Goswamis and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, namely Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, is more important. So he was making the point that, books about Srila Prabhupada can be important as well, just like books by Srila Prabhupada. But I would say still, having said that, our first, well, again, it sort of depends on who the person is. You might get an intuition of what kind of book would be most helpful for that particular person. It might be reading Prabhupada's book, it might be reading a book about Prabhupada. But whatever it is, book distribution is very pleasing to Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada wrote me, go on increasing books and go on increasing my pleasure. And when he wrote it, I took it, go on increasing books, in distributing books, go on increasing my pleasure. But when I think about it now, sometimes I take it, go on increasing books, and go on increasing writing books, and go on increasing my pleasure. All right, anything else? You seem to be frozen and muted. Okay, we'll move on to Nitai-gaurasundara, our host.
Thank you, Maharaj, for your continued mercy. So we're eagerly waiting for your book, and I love the idea of having this audio book.
Yes.
That will be wonderful. I hope that happens soon as the book is released.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And so, and this will be your last program for some time till you come back from India.
Yes. Yes.
So when you will be coming back from India, Maharaj?
Next March.
Next March. That'll be-
But as soon as I come back, I'll look forward to having my fourth Monday of the week with you again.
Thank you, Maharaj. But we'll keep in touch with your videos, the lectures. We'll keep on hearing those, Maharaj.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Maharaj.
So shall we go back to Krishna Jivani?
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I was wondering about, you mentioned about Krishna magic, how it must have felt being misunderstood, people actively trying to sabotage the devotees, to go from that to having a picture taken with a very prominent person. And you used the word Krishna magic, and I'm sure it felt like perhaps all the hard work was paying fruit, and that you are turning the corner. But then we see in your life that while the devotees were able to make inroads there, you still had to deal with Mr. N back in Bombay. And which of the moods were more predominant? Was it we followed Srila Prabhupada's instructions and look at it, we were able to make inroads, and that's the faith that kept going? Or was it sometimes, how come so many good things are happening, but this one person is like torturing us? So how did you balance that? It seems like a roller coaster of emotions in two different places.
Yeah. Well, Krishna is famous for killing so many demons. His glories are expanded by his disposing of demons. So Mr. Nair was a big demon. By Srila Prabhupada dealing with him successfully, Srila Prabhupada's glories were increased. Yes, when we got the news that Mr. Nair died, he phoned Srila Prabhupada, who was in New Zealand. And when he got the news, he folded his hands and said, thank you, Krishna. I was praying for this. Mr. Nair caused too much difficulty to the devotees and to the deities. So, and then he wrote us a letter. Some of his followers in Bombay that I've received news that Mr. Nair is dead. And see, when we heard that Mr. Nair was dead, we were jubilant. But then again, I was thinking, is that proper? You know, we're supposed to be stately persons. Are we supposed to be happy when someone dies? But in his response, Srila Prabhupada quoted Prahlad Maharaj, that even a saintly person takes pleasure when a snake or a scorpion is killed. And he said, Mr. Nair was a big snake. So our feeling happy upon his death was bona fide, approved by Prahlad Maharaj and Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you.
All right. So if there are no more questions or comments, we can. All right. There's a question from the live audience here. I was asking if Mrs. Nair is still alive. No, she passed away. But she, in a way, surrendered to Srila Prabhupada, and she regretted her husband's misbehavior. All right. So,
Maharaj, can we show that video?
yes. I would love to see that video, and I would love for our other participants to see it.
So our administrator of this, yes, she's starting. Thank you.
You should write. This is your first business. Go on writing.
This instruction was given to His Holiness Giriraj Swami personally by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada in 1971 and repeated over the years. In more than 5 decades since, Giriraj Swami has served Srila Prabhupada faithfully and tirelessly, sharing his experiences and realizations with us in his books. Have you ever wondered how service to God relates to service to man? What was Srila Prabhupada's vision that led people around the world to chant Krishna's names?
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare
watering the seed is an invaluable offering to all aspirants on the path of devotion. With many wonderful personal exchanges between Srila Prabhupada and his dear disciple, Giriraj Swami kindly shares his realizations with the honesty, wisdom, and humility for which he is known and loved. It transports us into Srila Prabhupada's intimate association during some of the most historic moments of ISKCON's development.
It's like in the sky there is one moon only, and there are millions of stars. But one more, dissipate the whole darkness of the night. Similarly, at least those who have taken to Krishna consciousness, each of you become a moon and a light to the world.
Oh hey Vaishnava Guru, Yara Saguru, Dasa Oh hey Vaishnava Thakura, Doyara Sagara, Edase Karuna Kori.
The great souls described in these pages are bright full moons of Srila Prabhupada's mercy. Their lives are living instructions, their activities chandrakas, cooling, illuminating moonbeams of Vaishnava sharing, teaching, and realization.
Diyapada Chaya Sodohe Amaya.
With their unconditional love and dedication to Srila Prabhupada, these personalities built this worldwide movement and gifted it to us to be nurtured by it and to serve.
An exclusive treatise on one's last days of life. That gives readers the resource to face death squarely. And deal successfully with that often fearful and painful, but also saving moment. Down to earth and practical as well as scriptural, both fresh and mature, it draws us in with superb narrative and also answers tough questions about death and dying.
Drawing from both spiritual leaders and experts in the field of hospice and palliative medicine, life's final exam has universal application.
One of the most important books about Srila Prabhupada. It's about Srila Prabhupada and his Leela of years of heartbreak and struggle in Juhu, Mumbai. No one else can write this book like His Holiness Giriraj Swami Maharaja.
Srila Prabhupada's struggle to establish Hare Krishna land and build a temple for Sri Sri Radha Rasa Bihari in Juhu on the outskirts of Bombay was perhaps the greatest effort of his preaching movement. By the strength of his desire, an overgrown plot of land in what had been a remote fishing village, infested with rats, snakes, and mosquitoes, became a place of pilgrimage and devotional service. And after a prolonged and arduous but victorious struggle, when the conveyance was finally signed, he declared, "It was a good fight. Someone should write a book about it."
I'll Build You a Temple transports us into one of the great events of our time. It is a story of surrender on the path of pure love, an incomparable story that many have tried to relate, but which no one will ever be able to tell, like His Holiness Giriraj Swami.
From the beginning, Giriraj Swami served the Juhu project in various roles for 30 years and spent years researching, writing, and preparing the book for publication. It is part of ISKCON history, a complement to Srila Prabhupada's Leelamrita.
This book is a page-turner to the highest degree. Once you begin, you just can't put it down.
In 1971, Srila Prabhupada directed young Giriraj Brahmachari, "You should write. This is your first business," an instruction he repeated over the years. Now, 52 years after Srila Prabhupada's order, and following both His Divine Grace's instruction that one may temporarily suspend the order of the spiritual master, but one should never neglect it, and his example that just like my Guru Maharaj gave me the order to write, though I have no time, I am always thinking of his order, and when the opportunity arises, I will take it up again. Giriraj Swami has written his 5th book, Dancing White Elephants. Traveling with Srila Prabhupada in India, August 1970 to March 1972. Covering visits to Amritsar, Indore, Surat, Bombay, Calcutta, Allahabad, Gorakhpur, Delhi, Madras, and Mayapur. In some 400 pages of text and 17 images, Dancing White Elephants, with the foreword by Malati Dasi, who was present for most of the adventures, will captivate the minds and hearts of readers and increase their attachment to and love for Srila Prabhupada and his white elephants, his disciples who helped him in his mission.
Through Maharaj's carefully chosen words, you will see the exquisite sights and feel like you are living the experiences that were part of establishing the Hare Krishna movement in India. You will meet incredible devotees who became pillars of this movement through their own storied spiritual growth and advancement, and be introduced to seemingly ordinary persons whose lives became transformed by contact with Prabhupada and his dancing white elephants, just as he envisioned.
Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Juta Padakamalam Sri Gurum Vaishnava Vangsha
Maharaj, I hope you liked the video. It is wonderful.
I loved it. Very inspiring.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, I was watching this video and the tears were dancing through my eyes.
Right.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So then let us conclude with Vaishnava Pranam. Let us offer our respectful obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. Or just like desire trees, we're going to fulfill the desires of everyone. Are full of compassion for fallen conditions. So, Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasinubhyascha Deshanam Bhavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namo. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Thank you.
Thank you, Maharaj, again for your
Wonderful reading, Maharaj. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you very much, Maharaj.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna,
Beautiful.
Maharaj. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.